Story 1. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Picture this. It's a moonless night, the kind where darkness seems to stretch endlessly in every direction. You're driving down a quiet, lonely road, the hum of your car engine the only company in the silence. The air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. And as your headlights carve a path through the pitch black, you start to notice something feels off. Welcome to 3 terrifying true night drive horror stories that will make you think twice before hitting the road after sunset. Caleb was heading home after a late-night shift. The stretch of road he was driving on was infamous for being empty and eerie. He was halfway through when he saw her, a young woman standing there with her thumb out. She looked to be in her early 20s, wearing a light jacket and jeans. Caleb hesitated. He'd heard all the warnings about picking up strangers, but something about her seemed desperate, harmless, even. Against his better judgment, he slowed down and rolled down the passenger window. "You need a ride?" he asked. She nodded, her face pale and drawn, her eyes darting nervously toward the woods. "Please, I just need to get to town." Caleb unlocked the door, and she climbed in. She was quiet, only offering short answers when he tried to make small talk. She seemed jittery, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone, or something, to appear behind them. About 10 minutes into the drive, Caleb realized he'd never asked her name. "I'm Caleb, by the way," he said, trying to sound friendly. She hesitated before replying. "Sarah." Another few minutes passed in silence before she suddenly spoke up. "Can you pull over here? This is close enough." Caleb frowned. They were still in the middle of nowhere, no sign of a town or even a house nearby. "You sure?" "There's nothing around here." Her voice trembled. "Please, I'll walk the rest of the way." Reluctantly, Caleb pulled over. As soon as the car stopped, Sarah bolted out without another word. She didn't head down the road, though. She vanished into the woods. Confused and a little unnerved, Caleb drove off. But the encounter lingered in his mind. When he got home, he mentioned it to his roommate, who grew visibly pale. "You said her name was Sarah?" his roommate asked. Caleb nodded. "A girl named Sarah went missing around there years ago. They never found her body." Chills ran down Caleb's spine. He wasn't sure what disturbed him more, the idea that he might have given a ride to a ghost, or the thought that whoever took Sarah might still be out there, lurking in those woods.
Story 2. The Road That Shouldn't Exist. This one comes from a woman named Lisa, who loved road trips. She often explored back roads just for the thrill of discovering new places. One night, driving through rural Pennsylvania, she decided to take a shortcut her GPS suggested. Big mistake. The road started out normal enough, paved and wide enough for 2 cars. But the further she went, the narrower it became. Her headlights illuminated thick trees on either side, their branches arching over the road like a tunnel. The GPS showed she'd be back on the highway in 20 minutes, so she pressed on. About 10 minutes in, she noticed something odd. The road wasn't paved anymore. It had turned into gravel without her realizing it. Her GPS still insisted she was on the right track, but doubt began to creep in. Then she saw it, a sign that read, "Dead End," partially hidden behind overgrown vines. She cursed under her breath, realizing she'd have to turn around. As she slowed to find a spot wide enough to make a U-turn, she caught movement in her peripheral vision. A figure darted between the trees, too quick to make out clearly. Lisa's pulse quickened. She told herself it was probably a deer or some other animal, but the unease wouldn't leave her. She turned her car around and started heading back the way she came, keeping an eye on her mirrors. That's when she saw them. 2 figures standing in the road behind her, barely illuminated by her taillights. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. Lisa's foot slammed on the gas, the gravel crunching loudly as she sped away. Her heart raced as the road stretched endlessly before her. It felt longer going back than it had coming in, and then she realized why. The trees looked different, twisted and gnarled, their branches almost clawing at her car as she passed. The GPS screen began to glitch, the map flickering in and out. Panic set in. She was lost. Completely and utterly lost. Finally, after what felt like hours, she burst out onto a paved road. The GPS recalibrated, and she managed to find her way back to the highway. She never found that road on any map later, and to this day, she's certain it wasn't just some random back road. It was something else entirely, something that wanted her to stay. Story 3. The Shadow Passenger. Mark was a truck driver used to long hauls and lonely nights on the road. One summer night, driving through the Midwest, he had an experience that still haunts him. He was about 4 hours into his shift, cruising down a straight, empty stretch of highway. The CB radio crackled occasionally, but otherwise it was just him and the hum of the truck. The clock read 3:13 a.m. when he first noticed it, movement in his side mirror. At first he thought it was just a trick of the light or his tired eyes playing tricks on him, but when he glanced again, he saw it clearly. A shadowy figure perched on the side of his trailer. It wasn't clinging to the ladder or any part of the truck, it seemed to be hovering just slightly above it. Mark's stomach dropped. He flicked on his trailer lights, hoping to scare off whatever it was, but the figure didn't move. It stayed there, perfectly still. He grabbed his CB radio and called out to any nearby drivers. "This is Big Red. Anyone else out here tonight? I think I've got someone, or something, on my trailer." A gruff voice replied, "You been hitting the coffee too hard, Big Red? Ain't nobody out there but you." Mark's knuckles turned white as he gripped the wheel. He couldn't pull over. Stopping in the middle of the highway was too dangerous, and there wasn't an exit for miles. He kept driving, his eyes darting between the road and the mirror. Then the figure moved. It crawled, no, slithered, down the side of the trailer and disappeared from view. A moment later, Mark felt the unmistakable weight shift of something climbing onto the cab. His breath caught as he glanced up at the windshield. For a split second, he thought he saw a face pressed against the glass. A dark, featureless face with hollow eyes. He swerved, nearly losing control of the truck, and when he looked again, it was gone. Mark didn't stop until he reached a well-lit truck stop an hour later. He inspected his truck, finding no signs of damage or anyone hitching a ride. But he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was, it had followed him for a reason. And there you have it, 3 terrifying tales of night drives gone wrong. Whether it's ghostly hitchhikers, cursed roads, or shadowy passengers, one thing's for sure. The road isn't always as empty as it seems,